Hello, I don't know how long this camera is gonna last because the battery needs to be recharged. Has maybe half an hour of battery left for video making. I don't know, but it will indicate eventually when it needs to be recharged, and then I have to turn the video off and I have to plug it in. But since both of my tablets need to be recharged, I wasn't paying attention to this last night. I should have plugged it in. Then I'm going to get my action camera out. This is a good excuse for me to get the action camera out now and go through the trouble. These are much easier to do, but I will take the action camera and I will make some footage with this clay also and talk about all these things that I needed to talk about, and also film the rhododendron and take some photos, and then I will upload it into my Microsoft computer and make something with it. So, but for now I'm going to do a little bit knitting and introspection, and there's so many things I needed to talk about that I can talk about forever and ever. It will just go on forever and ever of me talking. So I have to try to condense this now, particularly with the battery being almost discharged. So I need to figure out how to condense this information that I want to talk about. First of all, I want to mention this guy, Owen Cook. So for anyone who hasn't seen his videos yet, I highly recommend them because, and they're very popular of course, because they speak about a subject that most people and almost all men are interested in. So, and that is how to gain confidence and how to date women. But his videos go much further, much further than just that. That subject is more or less some kind of catching subject, some kind of, I'm not going to call it a bait subject, but, from the angel perspective, we can say a bait subject with an eye twinkling because he gets the message of introspection now to a much wider audience with that so-called bait subject of dating and how to get a woman in a bar. This is what's on most men's minds. And I see this, of course, I observe these things on Facebook. That is what they have on their minds. They're not interested in anything else. They're not interested in talking about philosophy. They're interested only in their own pleasure. Okay. They're pleasure seeking. So, and that makes me sometimes very angry, but that's my own problem. It's my when I'm angry, I can't see beyond the rim of my football stadium. I'm just mad because I am annoyed and I think people are dumb and I feel frustrated. They don't understand anything, and it's also talking onto my own history and all of this and my own pain. So, and it's like this constant struggle that I'm in, trying to bring a message across, and then I see people are not the slightest bit interested in it. They have other things on their minds, very, very selfish, self-gratifying, self-pleasing subjects that they want to talk about. So, and they're also very concerned about their own the self-image and their own prestige and their own preserving their own persona and whatever. And always pleasure, pleasure in mind, pleasure, 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 pleasure. Kind of like an alcohol addict, they are addicted to sex. So, and because when they have sexual thoughts or when they have a sexual interaction, whether it is on the internet like Facebook or watching porn or doing any kind of those things that stimulate that those hormones, then in that moment it's like a painkiller. They're not feeling the emotional pain, so they use that also very much as a pain controlling modality. They use that to run away from their childhood pain, from their from the really nitty gritty of what's going on in people's psychology. Because and that's a very, very popular and cheap way of changing one's biochemistry, away from the emotional pain from the past that does not feel good. Yeah, that probably causes cortisol and whatnot. And then if they can chase the cortisol and all these other the bad chemistry away and the bad thoughts away with sexual thoughts that are feeling good and that are pleasurable and they're like a pain medicine, then that's what they're doing all the time. That's why people get addicted to that so much, and then other people get addicted to alcohol and drugs, and overall, it's just a constant running away from pain and from the past and from that what is, the pressing emotions that have never been dealt with. And as long as people don't deal with those, they just keep growing. The problem keeps getting worse and worse and worse until people become psychotic, have nervous breakdowns, react in very inappropriate ways and become monsters and cruel to other living beings. All because they have not dealt with the real core issues of their lives, of the emotional problems. They don't go away. The emotional pain isn't going anywhere. It's there. Okay? And until we face it, until we sit with it and really, really sit with that stuff that is painful, until we really meditate, breathe with it. You can also stand, you don't have to sit, but sitting is more comfortable, and just not do anything else. Not allow any kind of other distraction to come in, any kind of escape route away from the pain. And people use all kinds of escape routes. They use all kinds of things. It even goes so far that a lot of women cut themselves because when you cut yourself, it creates the corpus callosum in the brain creates a counterbalance release of chemicals that counterbalance the pain. So the body learns how to make its own pain medicine, and then that pain medicine created by the body to counteract the cut pain, that counteract active endorphin or different chemicals that are feeling good, that numb the pain, they actually also numb the emotional pain, and that's when people get addicted. Okay, so that's what that's when all all addictions happen, when the modalities cover up the emotional pain and not just the physical pain in that moment. So and and because of that, I have to say the emotional pain is probably light years worse than any kind of physical pain. It's the emotional pain. And that's why people run away from it so ferociously. If they just understood that sitting with it is so much more liberating and empowering and healing for the entire system. This needs to be said, that needs to be addressed as much as possible. So I have to address this again and again and again in my videos. This is so incredibly important. And yesterday I saw a very, very good documentary film on YouTube. It was made for TV. It's a show they made in England. A famous psychologist lady with very large glasses and interesting artistic clothes, a very interesting woman. She wanted to find out how people react when they are not, when they don't have all these escape modalities. So, people sign up for it. A lot of people wanted to participate in this. She had 5 people go each into a one of those metal storage containers. They rebuilt those and they made them into like a hotel room. They had everything they needed, but they signed up to stay in those rooms that had no sounds at all. That were very blank, all white, everything white. Had a bit of a depressing hospital atmosphere because of that. That was also not very good. I see that rather as a so-called disturbing variable that came in and made it harder for some people to stay in those rooms. I would never do that. I could never do this. Not so much because not having any kind of stimulation from the outside environment, that wouldn't bother me so much. It would be refreshing not to have an overload of sounds or whatever, or images. But that would bother me, this feeling of the, all kinds of horror would come up in my brain when if I was exposed to an environment like this. So just the environment itself would completely freak me out, and it did freak out 2 women, and probably for the same reasons, but also because they didn't have the escape routes. But it wasn't like they weren't locked away, so they could come out of there at any time. They could just, you know, ring that bell and they would come and let them out, and then they would not have made it through the 5 days. So it was kind of like those people, they were also motivated to make it through those 5 days, and they didn't have a clock in there. They didn't know how long they were gonna be in there, and they couldn't really go by any kind of time measure. So at any time, and they couldn't see whether it was day or night, so they just went by their internal clock and went to sleep when they got tired, and so they didn't know at any given time what day it was and when these 5 days were gonna be up and they had made it through these 5 days. There was some kind of pride, motivation that was involved that would fall away with me. I would right away ring that bell and get out of there. So it has to be plugged in. Unfortunately, now I have to bring this tablet downstairs and it has to be recharged. But I will follow up now with my action camera.